Faye, a cinematic exploration of the untold connection between the world's greatest mind and the Wild West Faye. The legend begins in the autumn of 1952. A peculiar sight could be witnessed every Tuesday evening in Princeton, New Jersey. While most of the town slept peacefully, a solitary figure would slip through the shadows of Mercer Street, making his way to the old Paramount Theater, his wild white hair catching moonbeams, his worn leather shoes shuffling against the pavement. This was no ordinary movie. Goer, this was Albert Einstein, the man who unlocked the secrets of the universe, the genius who gave us relativity, who showed us that time itself could bend and space could curve. And every Tuesday night he would settle into the back row of that dimly lit theater, not to watch serious dramas or intellectual films, but to lose himself in tales of cowboys and outlaws, of dusty trails and frontier justice. The theater owner, Giuseppe Marcelli, remembered Einstein well. He always came alone, Marcelli would later recall. Always bought the same seat, fate back row, far left corner where the shadows were deepest. He'd arrive exactly 15 minutes before showtime, carrying a small brown paper bag with peppermint candies, and he'd stay until the very last credit rolled. Even when the janitor started sweeping around him, the professor would sit there, staring at the blank screen as if he was still seeing something the rest of us couldn't. What made Einstein's Tuesday ritual even more extraordinary was his preparation. Earlier that day, he would walk to the Princeton Public Library and carefully research the Western films being shown. He studied the directors, read about the historical periods depicted, and even researched geography of filming locations. This wasn't casual entertainment for the world's most famous scientist, Faye. This was serious study. For decades, the world knew Einstein as the wild-haired professor, the thoughtful pacifist, the man who revolutionized our understanding of reality itself. But what they didn't know was that behind those brilliant eyes lay a secret passion that would shock everyone who thought they understood the greatest mind of the 20th century. The first clue came from his secretary, Helen Dukas, who discovered something extraordinary hidden in Einstein's private study after his death in 1955. Tucked between his groundbreaking scientific papers and complex mathematical equations was a worn notebook, its leather cover darkened by years of handling. The notebook was thick Faye, nearly 400 pages Faye, and filled not with formulas, but with detailed observations about Western films, character analyses of cowboys, and most surprisingly, connections between the laws of physics and the moral code of the frontier. The notebook's first entry, dated the 15th of March, 1933, read, "Today I discovered a new universe, not one of space and time, but of honor and justice. If I can understand the curvature of space-time, surely I can understand the straight line of a man's character when faced with evil. What could possibly connect the man who gave us EINSTEIN'S with the world of six-shooters and saloons?" The answer lay not just in the notebook, but in letters Einstein wrote to his closest friend, Swiss engineer Michel Bessot, letters that remained sealed until 1982. In one letter, dated April 1948, Einstein wrote, "My dear Michel, you would laugh to see me these days. While the world expects me to solve the mysteries of the universe, I find myself utterly captivated by the mysteries of the American frontier. There is a physics to courage, a mathematics to justice, that I am only beginning to understand." The man behind the gun, Einstein's love affair with Western films began in the most unlikely of circumstances. In 1933, fleeing Nazi Germany, he arrived in America carrying little more than his violin, his scientific papers, and a heart heavy with the weight of a world gone mad. Princeton offered him sanctuary, but not solace. The gentle physicist who had spent his life pondering the infinite now found himself haunted by very finite and human fears. Those first months in Princeton were brutal for Einstein. He wrote to his cousin, "I feel like a ghost haunting someone else's life. The equations that once brought me peace now mock me with their cold perfection. How can mathematics explain a world where evil triumphs and good men are silenced? It was during this dark period that a colleague, Professor John Wheeler, knowing Einstein's struggle with sleepless nights and growing depression, suggested he might find relaxation at the local cinema. Try something simple. Wheeler advised over coffee at the faculty club, something that doesn't require thinking. Maybe one of those Western pictures the Americans love so much. That night, the 15th of March, 1933, Einstein wandered into a screening of The Virginian, a 1929 Western street, starring Gary Cooper. He later wrote that he chose the film almost randomly, drawn only by the poster's image of a lone man silhouetted against an endless sky. As the lights dimmed and the vast landscapes of the American frontier filled the screen, something unexpected happened to the great physicist. For 2 hours, his brilliant mind stopped racing through equations and found peace in the simple moral clarity of the Old West. In his secret notebook, which we now know he kept for over 22 years, Einstein wrote about that first viewing. In the Western story, I find a universe where right and wrong are as clear as the horizon line, where a man's worth is measured not by his theories, but by his courage to stand for what is just. There is a beautiful physics to honor. It cannot be bent or broken, only upheld or abandoned. Tonight, for the first time since leaving Germany, I slept without nightmares. Week after week, month after month, Einstein would slip away to his private screenings. He developed a ritual around his movie, going that was as precise as his scientific methodology. Tuesday evenings were reserved for new releases. Thursday matinees for classics he wanted to study again. He kept detailed notes on every film, rating them not on entertainment value, but on what he called their moral physics fey, how clearly they demonstrated the fundamental forces of human nature. He watched John Wayne stride across Monument Valley in Stagecoach, writing, "Wayne moves through space like a planet in orbit, fey, inevitable, powered by unseen forces, following a trajectory that seems predetermined yet somehow chosen." He studied Gary Cooper's quiet strength in High Noon, noting, "Cooper understands what I am learning about relativity, fey, that time moves differently under pressure. His character experiences a full lifetime in 90 minutes, while the town experiences mere moments of discomfort. His neighbors thought they knew where their famous resident spent his evenings, fey, surely working on new theories, corresponding with fellow scientists, or playing his beloved violin." Even his closest colleagues at the Institute for Advanced Study had no idea that the man who could explain the curvature of space-time was actually captivated by the straight-shooting simplicity of cowboy justice. But Einstein's fascination went deeper than mere entertainment. In that secret notebook, page after page revealed the mind-making unexpected connections. He wrote extensively about the parallels between the loneliness of the frontier hero and the isolation of scientific discovery. Both the cowboy and the physicist stand alone against forces that others cannot see or understand. Both must rely on codes that transcend popular opinion. Both must be willing to be misunderstood for the sake of truth. He analyzed how both cowboys and physicists operated by unbreakable codes, fey, one moral, one mathematical. Most remarkably, he found profound similarities between the relativity of human perspective and the subjective nature of frontier justice. After watching The Ox-Bow Incident, he wrote, "What appears as justice from one frame of reference appears as vengeance from another. The mob believes they are upholding the law. The innocent men believe they are victims of injustice. Both are correct within their own system of observation. This is relativity applied to morality." The Untold chapter, perhaps the most astonishing discovery in Einstein's Western notebook, was a series of entries dated throughout 1947 and 1948, years when he was working intensively on his unified field theory, FICAS, his attempt to find a single equation that could explain all the forces of the universe. During this period of intense scientific pressure, when colleagues worried about his increasingly isolated research methods, his Western film sessions became more frequent and his observations more profound. Einstein's housekeeper, Margot Lefebvre, later recalled this period. The professor would come home from the films with this strange energy. He'd rush to his study, still wearing his coat, and write furiously for hours. Sometimes I'd hear him laughing to himself. Other times I'd find equations scrawled on napkins alongside notes about cowboys and horses. In one remarkable entry, written after watching My Darling Clementine, for the fourth time, Einstein drew a detailed diagram showing the parallels between the gravitational dance of celestial bodies and the delicate social dynamics of a frontier town. In both systems, he wrote, small changes in initial conditions can lead to dramatically different outcomes. A single act of courage or cowardice in Tombstone affects the entire community's trajectory, just as a single particle's behavior influences the fabric of space-time itself. John Ford understands this intuitively. Every character decision ripples through the narrative like gravitational waves through the cosmos. But it was his analysis of Red River that revealed the true depth of Einstein's philosophical connection to the Western genre. After watching the film 3 times in 1 week, an unprecedented devotion for the usually disciplined scientist, he wrote 17 pages about the relationship between leadership and relativity. Howard Hawks has shown me something profound about the nature of authority, he noted. Just as there is no absolute frame of reference in physics, there is no absolute moral authority on the frontier. Tom Dunson believes he is right. His adopted son believes he is right. And from their respective positions in space and time, both are correct. Truth depends on where you stand, both literally and figuratively. The notebook also revealed that Einstein had begun incorporating Western metaphors into his thinking about quantum mechanics. He wrote extensively about the uncertainty principle in terms of frontier justice, how you could never predict exactly when a gunfight would occur, only calculate the probability based on the observable conditions present. Heisenberg's principle, he noted, is not unlike the code of the West. You cannot know both a man's intentions and his actions with perfect certainty. The very act of observing of calling a man out changes the outcome of the encounter. During the summer of 1949, Einstein made a discovery that would forever change how we understand his approach to scientific problems. While working on field equations that had stumped him for weeks, creating what he called mathematical knots that seemed impossible to untie, he attended a screening of She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. The film's meditation on duty, sacrifice, and the passing of time struck him so powerfully that he rushed home and, in a burst of inspiration lasting until dawn, solved a mathematical puzzle that had been blocking his progress for months. In his notebook, he wrote, Captain Nathan Brittles knows his time is ending, yet he continues to serve with honor, finding meaning not in permanence, but in the grace of transition. This is the key I was missing in my equations. Not all systems seek equilibrium. Some find their greatest stability in the acceptance of change, in the elegance of inevitable transformation. My mathematics were trying to freeze time like a photograph. But time, like the frontier, must always be moving forward, always becoming something new. That breakthrough led directly to one of his most significant papers on field theory, published in 1950. Hidden in the acknowledgments, invisible to all but the most careful readers, was a reference to N.B. Nathan Brittles, the cavalry captain who taught a Nobel laureate about the physics of letting go. The legacy lives on when news of Einstein's secret passion finally emerged decades later, through the discovery of his Western notebook in 1995. The scientific community was initially skeptical, even dismissive. How could the man who revolutionized physics have drawn serious inspiration from what many academics considered simple popular entertainment? The notebook had been found by Princeton graduate student Jennifer Walsh, who was cataloging Einstein's personal effects for a centenary exhibition. I almost dismissed it as a curiosity, Walsh later admitted, a famous scientist's quirky hobby. But as I began transcribing the entries, I realized I was reading the inner workings of genius seeing how one of history's greatest minds processed complex ideas through the lens of American mythology. But as scholars delved deeper into the notebook's contents over the following years, a different picture emerged. Einstein's Western obsession wasn't a distraction from his scientific work. It was fuel for it. The moral clarity he found in frontier stories helped him navigate the ethical implications of atomic energy, particularly his role in the Manhattan Project's development. The themes of isolation and responsibility in Western films mirrored his own struggles with fame and the burden of genius. The visual metaphors of vast spaces and distant horizons informed his thinking about the infinite cosmos. Dr. Margaret Chen, a theoretical physicist at Stanford, who spent 5 years studying Einstein's Western notebook, discovered that many of his breakthrough insights followed his Tuesday night movie sessions. There is a clear pattern, she explains. Einstein would encounter a scientific roadblock, attend a Western film, and return to his work with a fresh perspective that often led to significant progress. His notebook shows at least 18 major theoretical advances that can be directly traced to insights gained while watching these films. Chen's research revealed something even more remarkable. Einstein had developed what he called frontier physics, a methodology that applied Western moral frameworks to scientific problems. When facing a complex theoretical challenge, Chen notes, Einstein would ask himself, what would the frontier hero do? This led him to prefer solutions that were elegant, direct, and morally consistent over those that were merely mathematically sophisticated. More surprisingly, several of Einstein's most famous quotes can now be traced to ideas first explored in his Western film analysis. His observation that imagination is more important than knowledge appears in his notebook after watching The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, where he wrote, "In the West, legend often serves truth better than fact. The newspaper editor chooses to print the legend because myths carry deeper truths than mere events. Perhaps this is also true in science. Our imaginative models of reality may be more valuable than our limited observations. We must learn to print the legend of what could be, not just record what is." His famous assertion that God does not play dice with the universe takes on new meaning when read alongside his Western notebook entry about high noon. The marshal faces the Miller gang, not because chance demands it, but because his character makes it inevitable. In this moral universe, outcomes are determined not by probability but by the fundamental nature of the participants. If God has given us free will, perhaps the universe operates more like Hadleyville than like a casino. Today, Einstein's Western notebook sits in the Princeton University archives. Its pages a testament to the unexpected ways that genius finds its inspiration. Film scholars study it alongside physics students. Western enthusiasts discover new depths in classic films through the eyes of the century's greatest mind. And scientists working on the most complex problems in modern physics sometimes find themselves asking the question Einstein penciled in the margin of his final calculations. What would the cowboy do? The notebook has inspired a new field of study called narrative physics, the exploration of how storytelling patterns mirror natural laws. Dr. Chen now teaches a course called Einstein Cinema, where students learn relativity by analyzing Western films. Einstein showed us that truth can be found anywhere, she explains, even in what others dismiss as mere entertainment. The notebook's final entry, written just weeks before Einstein's death in April 1955, after watching The Searchers at what would be his last movie session, reads, "I have spent my life trying to understand the fundamental forces that govern our universe. Tonight, watching Ethan Edwards continue his search despite years of futility, I realize that perhaps the most fundamental force of all is the human capacity to continue searching even when the trail grows cold, even when hope seems lost. The cowboy and the scientist are not so different. Both are wanderers in vast spaces, both guided by codes they cannot abandon, both seeking truths that may forever remain just beyond the horizon. In the end, perhaps the search itself is the answer." As the lights dim on our story, we're left with a profound truth that Einstein discovered in those darkened movie theaters of Princeton. Sometimes the greatest insights come not from complex calculations, but from simple stories about courage, justice, and the eternal human struggle to do right in an uncertain world. The genius who showed us that space and time are woven together found his inspiration in tales of the American frontier, where right and wrong, though never simple, were always clear. In the end, perhaps that is the most beautiful equation of all, Faye, that wisdom can be found anywhere, even in the dust and legends of the Old West, and somewhere, in the cosmic dance of stars and galaxies, in the quantum uncertainty of subatomic particles, in the elegant simplicity of Faye, the spirit of the frontier rides on, eternal, mysterious, and infinitely inspiring. Fate the end, Faye.